Hi there, it's Sarah here from BJC Health, coming to you from Sydney, Australia. Thanks for showing an interest in one of our educational events. You're about to watch part one, so enjoy the event. If you've got any questions about the content, then please consider joining BJC Connect, where you can access all of our facilitators live. Otherwise, please consider leaving a comment and we'll do our best to get back to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the intro, Sarah. So I also am very excited to talk about posture because I think this is something I cover with most of my patients at some time of the treatments they may have for physio. So hopefully I can share quite a few nuggets and you can have a few take homes that you can implement into your day. So very simply, what is posture? So it's a particular position of the body. Sounds quite simple, doesn't it? So I can't believe I spend, many of my sessions talking about it. But it's the characteristic way in which someone holds their body when standing or sitting. That's another way of thinking about posture. So standing and sitting, I would say, are two different types of posture that we talk about a lot. And they are more what we call static postures. But posture can also be dynamic. So posture could be your walking posture. It could be your posture when you're cooking. It could be your posture when you're gardening, when you're bending over. So really it covers a very, very wide range of different positions of the body. Of course, I think standing and sitting would be the two of the most common ones that I talk about due to the way we do most of our activities daily living these days. So many of you will probably be trying to get good posture, but why is it actually important to have good posture? So, very from a physiotherapist, very biased perspective, obviously it's going to help your musculoskeletal system. So all your bones, joints, muscles are going to be in a more optimal position if you're in good posture. Prolonged poor posture, however, can lead to other issues such as inhibition of postural tonic muscles. So Sarah is going to go through a few of these maybe less familiar terms in a few slides' time. It can cause fatigue of what we call phasic muscles. It can put extra pressure onto some of our joints. And these days, Australians on average are sedentary for 7 to 10 hours a day. Often when I talk about these sort of facts with patients nowadays, I compare our lifestyle now to, when we were back in the caveman days, we never sat, right? We would have been foraging for fruit or chasing after animals. So these days, really, our lifestyle is very different. So the way we use our body has really evolved, and that has its pros and cons, I think.
And in case you needed some more motivation to think about posture and try and optimize it as best you can, it's not just our muscles and tendons and joints that benefit from, better posture. So there's benefits to your respiratory system. So maybe you can just try this sitting, or if you're lying down, wherever you are. If you allow yourself to really hunch, so really round through the shoulders, you might even want to tuck in your chin a little bit. This is often how I find Belle in the staff room at work. No, just kidding. But in that kind of rounded posture, now try and take a really deep breath in. So in through the nose, out through the mouth, maybe just try it a couple of times. You're still going to be able to breathe. But now try and compare that to if you were to really sit up nice and straight, like as best you can, shoulders back, up nice and tall, and then just try again to take that nice deep breath. And so I know that's a very simple, quick little drill, but if you think about some of the positions we're in for prolonged periods of time, if breathing is more difficult, you're just going to spend more energy needing to contract different muscles. And for something like breathing, where we don't really have a choice about breathing, we have to breathe in order to survive, it's just going to make that whole effort a little bit more challenging. So I think important to think about the breathing, and just making breathing a little bit easier is often something our patients are interested in. There's also benefits to your digestive system. So although that's not something myself or Belinda are experts in, of course, a number of our clients have some digestive challenges. And although that might need to be managed not just by, improving your posture, it's important to recognize that, yes, if you can be holding yourself in good postures most of the time, that's going to help your digestion. It's going to help your, internal organs just function with a bit more ease and with a bit more efficiency. So I think that's very motivating. It can help your spinal health. It's good for your circulation. I think what I consider posture is part of why we think it's important is it's just going to help your body function in a bit more of an efficient and easier way. And if just day-to-day things are a little bit easier, then you've got more energy and you can, use your efforts to do some of the other things you might like to do. So ideally, we want our bodies to be able to get through our day-to-day things in as much ease as possible. And so I think posture can play a role in that. It's obviously not the only thing. And the final thing I thought I'd pop there is, just benefits to even mental health and confidence. So I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Amy Cuddy. She's done some wonderful research on, just the amazing changes that our body language can have on our confidence, how we might go into meetings or difficult conversations. And just by changing your posture can make a huge difference to then going about somewhat difficult or nerve-wracking things. So posture is very powerful. So definitely we're going to spend most of our time tonight talking about the muscles and the tendons and that kind of stuff, but there's other benefits too. So hopefully that's motivating as well. Okay, over to you, Bel.
So what does good posture actually look like? So this is definitely what I would have learned at university as to how we should be teaching good posture. So on the right of the screen, we have the young lady, and you'll see her ear is directly on top of the middle of her shoulders. Her spine is quite straight in sitting, and it's directly on top of her hips, and her hips and knees are both at 90 degrees. Okay. If in these two pictures of the sitting and the standing, if you ever look at a young child sit or stand, normally they're sitting in these postures. So when we're born, we have this amazing ability to stand and sit like this. And obviously over time, through different habits and different ways that we do things for hours on end, such as, sit in front of screens, that potentially changes the way we sit and stand. But this is on the right, ideally how we would like to see someone sit in good posture. On the left, we have a skeleton who's standing. And similarly, if you look, if we had to draw a line down the body, the ear is directly on top of the middle of the shoulder, which is directly on top of the center of the pelvis. And then this is directly on top of the middle of the knee and then the ankle. So this is a very, very straight spine and what we would call good posture, if you looked in a textbook, I think.
And why you might catch both of us tonight saying good posture or what does great posture look like? And I guess why we're doing these fingers is because the reality is, and I'm just thinking, Vivian, I wish, maybe I should take a photo of how I'm sitting right now. The reality is none of us are going to sit like that most of our day, and that's okay. So I think what we don't want anyone to leave tonight thinking is that I have to sit like that girl on the right and I need to stand like that guy on the left, because that's just not going to be possible for most of us for a number of reasons. So I think, though, it's good to still have that picture of what is ideal and what our body is going to feel most comfortable in and work towards that, because it's also okay to sit in lots of other postures different to the one you're seeing on the screen. But yes, Bel is correct in that. These are the ideal pictures. But don't worry if you think, gosh, I don't look like that when I'm watching TV at night, or I don't look like that when I'm sitting to do phone calls or work. That's okay.
Okay, so just a little bit more about standing posture. So these are some of the different postures that I might see present into the clinic. So on the right, we have the man in good posture, and pretty much the 4 postures to the left of him are just different postures that I might see. It's just not as optimal. And I guess the reason might not be optimal is it then puts different stress onto different parts of the body. It puts stress onto different joints of the body. And then over time, obviously, if they're in these less ideal postures for long periods of time, perhaps it would cause different aches or pains from a physio's perspective. So the next one is what we call forward head posture. I'm going to talk about this a bit more, but obviously you'll see his chin and his ear is over his shoulder, which was that ideal posture. This then puts different stresses onto probably his neck muscles. It might cause more of a curvature in his spine as well. The next one, again, another very common one is what we call a thoracic kyphosis. So you'll see that rounding in the middle of the back, and to compensate his center of gravity, his thighs and have to come forward a bit to balance him out in standing. The next one we have is called a lumbar lordosis. This is another very common one. It can cause various different pains in the back. And again, I guess one of the take homes perhaps is that, if someone is standing in a lumbar lordosis for a period of time, over a very long period of time, it can cause damage or aches and pains. But if someone was to do that for a couple of hours, every couple of months, it's probably not going to be an issue. It's when these postures if people are in these postures for very, very long periods of time. And the last one that you can see on the left is what we call sway back posture. So you can see this man in this picture is leaning quite far back. He has to stick his pelvis forward just to balance his body out, and his knees are then in a slightly different position to what we would consider to be ideal.
But I guess one thing to look at all those different variations, there's one similarity in all of them. And can anyone pop in the chat? What is the similarity to all those postures? Besides the fact that they're standing up, I want to see, can anyone pick what, despite all those different postures, that the person is still maintaining to achieve? That's good. There's a few people leaning in to take a look, which is good. Don't be shy. Have a guess. Balance. Or what I'm going to share with you is link to balance. So you're on the right track there. I'll wait another 10 seconds. Does anyone else know? Feet placement. Oh, you're correct. I didn't look at the feet, but yes, their feet are consistent, which is good. The legs, stability, all good guesses. So the one thing I was going to share, and I've always remembered this, I can't remember where someone sort of really emphasized this point, but our body and our brain is very much programmed to keep our eyes on the horizon. So even if you experience back pain or you experience an injury which, brings you forward, without you having to think about it, you're going to then compensate to try and keep your head up. Because it's very important for our survival to be able to see what's going on, and being able to see things clearly and adjust to our environment helps us balance. It helps us be stable. And so all of those different postures you'll see, even if there's only, I guess, maybe initially an issue in one part of the body is so smart at trying to then adjust other bits and, protect you, but in order to keep your head up. So I think that's worth knowing, that if you're able to, and it's okay if you've seen a physio, if you've worked with someone in the past and they've said, oh, you've got a lumbar lordosis or you're compensating, those are normal processes. Our body is trying to keep us alive, or our brain's trying to keep us alive, and it works with the body to try and help keep us safe. So some of these compensations, we've got to be aware of them. We've got to help you manage them. But I think, again, the brain does a lot to try and help us manage things as best we possibly can. So fun fact, eyes are always going to be up, or your body's going to work really hard to keep your eyes up. Okay, Bel, what about muscles?
Okay, so this is a bit of background onto some of the postural muscles, and it will just help lead into the next couple of slides. Obviously, it's a head, a neck, and a shoulder. So some of the main muscles I often talk about as a physiotherapist, and the postural muscles, the muscles that help hold up our chest and our head, would be the pec muscle and the bicep muscle, and what we call the serratus anterior muscle across the rib cage. So these muscles, if the posture isn't optimal, can definitely get a bit tight. So often, if as a physiotherapist, I might work on them. I might give you exercises to stretch out that area. If the shoulder is rounded, they tend to shorten across the front. The neck muscles and the main muscles that would be affected if someone's posture is less optimal, it would be that front area called the sternocleidomastoid. There's the big muscle at the back is called the trapezius. There's also, it's not in this picture, but your scalenes. So all these muscles, when the head comes forward, have to work quite hard to then keep it upright and looking at the horizon, as Sarah would say. But just keep these muscles in mind as we go to the next few slides.
Don't worry, we're not going to quiz you on all those muscles at the end, but both me and Belinda had horrible exams where we were quizzed on all those things back in the day.
Okay. So when the head is heavier, when the posture is less optimal, all those muscles actually have to work a little bit harder. So this is a really interesting diagram, I always think, and I'll try and explain it systematically. But on the left of the screen, obviously this guy is in ideal posture looking at, what looks like a phone. So we will call that 0 degrees or neutral. So in that position, the average head weighs about 5 to 6 kilograms. Okay. You'll see with every subsequent 15 degrees or so head tilt forward, the head becomes quite a bit heavier. So if we go to the extreme picture on the right, which is the 60 degrees of neck flexion or bend forward, the head becomes 60 pounds. So that's, somewhere between about 28 kilos or so. So you can imagine that same group of muscles that's holding up the head at 0 degrees has to work pretty much 6 times heavier to hold up your head when it's stooped forward. So the neck muscles work at a much more optimal efficiency when your head is 0 degrees. The way I like to explain to patients often is, if you think about your head, it's like a bowling ball. And your spine, if you think that last time you saw a spine model, those little vertebrae are really, really small. They're not big, but it's got this big bowling ball on top. So the spine can't do a lot. The cervical spine cannot do a lot in supporting your head. So all those muscles have to work really, really hard. And then if you add on top of that, when your head comes forward and it gets heavier, it's no wonder that, I do see people with neck pain and their muscles all around the scalenes across the front or the trapezius muscle across the back, they get very tight because they're trying to support this big bowling ball, of skull, brain, everything else in there with all this, just a few muscles around the neck area. So this is, I always think, a very informative diagram as to why we think for the neck, good posture is important. And these days, you may have heard of the terms tech or text neck, because when we are looking at our phones, it's very hard to hold it in that upright posture, which then creates more load onto our neck muscles.
Oh, okay. I know there's a bit of text in this slide, but we're going to try and go through it bit by bit. But just to start, it's worth knowing that although we've got lots of different types of muscles in our body and they all have different roles and different functions and they help us move different bits and pieces, we do have different ways of classifying muscles and what their main role is and how are they designed and what are they actually meant to do. So you might have remember in one of the earlier slides, we talked about phasic muscles and tonic muscles. So this table is just comparing these muscles and their function. And again, when we then start to talk about exercise, hopefully it brings together why addressing both types of muscles is important when it comes to posture. So we'll go through phasic muscles first. So the terms aren't super easy to remember, but the main function of what we'd call a phasic muscle is movement and doing stuff. Okay, so these muscles really help us throw our arm, pick things up, walk, go upstairs, move our bodies and apply force. Okay, and maybe go right down to the bottom row and go, what are some examples? So we've got our glutes. So they're the big muscles that are around your hips. There's a few different muscles there. Your deltoid, so that's the muscle that sits on the outside of your shoulder here. Your triceps, which is the muscle down the back of your arm, and your rectus abdominis, which is your tummy muscles. So those muscles we label as being phasic. They help us with movement. And if we look at the type of muscle fiber that mostly makes up these muscles, we call them fast twitch or type 2. And again, that muscles that are predominantly fast twitch, again, we know help us with movement, help us getting out of the way, help us picking things up, running, those sorts of things. So for these muscles, if we're inactive for long periods of time, if we do happen to spend, prolonged periods in less optimal postures, these muscles can weaken and they can lengthen. Okay, that just tends to be, it's not always, but generally that's how those sorts of muscles tend to respond and adapt to periods of inactivity. Okay, and when we talk about how quick they are to fatigue, these muscles, because they're just built to help us do stuff, they tend to fatigue. They've got a lower fatigue resistance than the other type of muscle, which we'll go to. So hopefully that makes sense. So the bigger muscles help us move, fast twitch fibers, but if we're not moving them, they will definitely get a little weaker and they tend to lengthen. Now, on the flip side, your tonic muscles. So these muscles are made up a little bit differently. So they've got more, or they're predominantly made up of slow twitch fibers, which we call type 1. Their main role is to help provide us with support and stability. So these muscles have a slightly different main role. And muscles are wonderful multitaskers. There's lots of muscles that do all sorts of different jobs, but tonic muscles, their main role is to help us in our posture and help keep us stable. Now, these muscles, if you're inactive or in poor postures for a prolonged period of time, they tend to tighten and get shorter. Okay, so they react a little bit differently. They have a higher fatigue resistance than the other type of muscles. And again, some examples are your hamstrings. So they're the big muscles on the back of your leg, your hip flexors. They're on the front of your hip, quite close to your quadriceps. Your upper traps, which Belle's mentioned a little bit before, they're the big muscle at the top of your shoulder and, attached to your neck there. And your erector spinae, which is a muscle that runs all the way down your spine. So I think we didn't want to get too bogged down in this, but I think it's good to have an idea, because often we'll get asked, but I do stretch my muscles. And I am, trying my best to stretch or use my spiky ball. But depending on the type of muscle and depending on where your issues might be, you might actually be better off spending that time strengthening the muscle. So that hopefully that concept is useful, and we'll come back to it a little bit more when we're talking about exercise. But it's not always just about stretching more. Sometimes managing posture also requires strengthening. It just depends on the muscle group and depends on the area. Okay, so we're going to go into some tips now. So hopefully you've got a bit more of an idea of the anatomy, the benefits of good posture. And so we'll try and go through now some habits and some different practical ways you can try and optimize your posture. And we've broken it down, thinking about all the things that are in our control to try and manage your posture as best you can. We've got these 5 categories. So we're going to talk about sitting posture a bit more. Now that you know what ideal sitting looks like, what are some ways we can try and, manage that most of the time? We're going to talk about device use, and not just phones. We're going to talk about laptops and just the other devices that we might be using, standing and walking patterns, our sleep position, and then we're going to talk a little bit about exercise. Okay, so Belle's going to talk about sitting posture first. So Belle, how do you help people, because I'm sure you get asked, well, I need to sit a lot for work. I need to sit, if I'm babysitting children. So it's not like we can avoid sitting, but what are some tips to help people manage their seated posture?
Well, we're going to go through a few, but I guess the easiest one I tend to give is to get up regularly. Okay, so if you can get up every half an hour, every hour, go for a walk around the house, go for a walk around the block, whatever it may be, even just standing up is just to change your posture is the most important. So a very something I like to tell my patients, and I think this is one of probably the best take home for the talk, if you can remember one thing, it's that the best posture is your neck posture. So if you sat in perfect posture all day, so like the picture we showed you earlier in the slide, and didn't move for 7-10 hours, it's still not ideal. We really want you to be moving, so you can stand, you can walk, you can sit. And if you were to sit in really, really bad posture, conversely, so if you were to sit slouched on the couch, it's not the worst thing in the world as long as you get up and move regularly. So I think one of the best things you can do in terms of is change your position, change your sitting posture, get standing if you can, but just try and keep moving as much as you can.
And that, I think, although as a concept sounds hopefully reasonably straightforward, implementing that can be really difficult. So depending on where you work, depending if you're in an office versus at home, I think it can take a little bit of reflecting and really working through your own sort of environment, your own sort of lifestyle and situation to come up with strategies that work for you. Because I'm aware that I've definitely had clients where just in their office environment, it's, unfortunately a bit frowned upon to be getting up all the time. So if that's the case for you, you might need to consider how to maximize your time outside of work and keep yourself moving as much as you can. Setting alarms or linking different tasks in your day and trying to connect that to different postures is another way that some clients have found, taking this concept and implementing it helpful. I remember during COVID and lockdown, when we were doing lots of phone calls, I tried to get into the habit of every time I spoke on the phone, I made sure I was standing up, unless I really needed to also then be on my laptop. So if you're someone who's got different tasks or, depending on how you break up the day, trying to get into a routine with breaking up your postures. Yeah, it's one of the best things. It's It sounds straightforward, but again, both of us realize it still can be hard to implement depending on your own scenario. And Belle will talk.
Just on that, something I share often with patients, and it was one of my big learnings from COVID actually, because obviously lockdown happened very suddenly for all of us, and a lot of our patients were forced to work from home, and it all happened very suddenly, so no one knew what to do. But what I learned from that was a lot of people, A, weren't sitting in optimal positions, but B, everyone was just stuck at home and they just decided to work all day because there was nothing else to do. We're in lockdown. But as a result of that, I saw a lot of postural related injuries. So a lot of neck pain, a lot of back pain, a lot of shoulder pain. And sometimes these people were exercising still. So sometimes they were still going to the gym, but because they were seated for much, much longer periods of time, a lot of people, they didn't have their incidental walk into the bus stop, the train station, all that. We saw a lot more injuries. So that really, for me, was a big learning that people really just need to move a bit more and consistently as well. But in saying that, we do have, the wonders of some tools to help us with posture. Something I like to tell my patients often is that if we do want to achieve, this optimal posture, there's a few things we need to consider. So people need to be aware, first of all, of what is posture and constantly aware of their posture, because obviously it's very easy to slouch for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, as you're sitting. You also need to have the strength to maintain the posture and also the mobility in your joints. So we will go through some of these strategies as well in the next couple of slides. But in terms of tools, so on the left, you'll see someone with a posture brace. There's lots of options on the market. You can really get lots of different sorts of devices. Some are even linked to your phone and will buzz. You can put a device in your back. The one on the screen is the one that we sell in the clinic. It's called a Posture Medic. It works really well. It's a kind of like a stretchy band. You put it on, you can wear a jacket on top and you pretty much cannot see the brace at all. But it reminds you to sit up straight and to pull your shoulders back so that you can't slouch down and be in that stooped posture. Typically, people find it reasonably comfortable, and you can work for long periods of time if you do need to sit and you need that reminder. Taping is another really good adjunct to help people, to remind them of posture. The tape works very similarly, but obviously it's just not as permanent, and you can't have it on for long, days on end, because you can tend to get skin allergies. But it just works as a reminder. As if you do slouch forward, it will just pull and tug on your back or your skin a little bit, and then it will remind you to sit up straight. So tools like this can really help with that awareness part of sitting up straight.
So you've just finished watching part 1 of one of our recent educational events. Hope you enjoyed the content. If you'd like to access part 2, then you need to sign up for BJC Connect. It's a free platform where you can access not just the recordings of past events, but also access a whole range of upcoming future events and access our team of facilitators live. All of the details that you need to join BJC Connect are now flashing up on your screen. But otherwise, like our staff, subscribe if you'd like to see more information from BJC Health. Look forward to seeing you in an event soon.